Welcome to Telewizja Republika. We begin with a startling update from Iran, where President Ebrahim Raisi, one of the country's most prominent figures and a potential successor to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, tragically perished in a helicopter crash. This event casts a shadow over the geopolitical landscape, especially as it involves a country with significant ties to Russia and whose weapons play a critical role on the battlefronts of Ukraine. Shifting to the front lines of Ukraine itself, the fight of the state against Russian aggression, we zoom into Kharkiv Oblast, where the town of Vovchansk becomes the latest focal point of conflict. Despite intense Russian assaults, Ukrainian forces maintain control of approximately 60% of Vovchansk, bravely holding back the advancing troops amid continuous shelling. This battle underscores the relentless pressure faced by Ukrainian defenders, nothing new as we know, but also show how little progress Putler's henchmen actually made. The city was supposed to be captured by Ruskies last week, if you believe their fairy tales. Adding to Russia's maritime woes, another vessel from its Black Sea fleet has met a grim fate. Ukraine's Navy, or actually the thing that works as Ukraine Navy, reported the successful destruction of the Russian sea minesweeper Kovrovets. This marks another significant blow to Russian naval capabilities in the region. Well, it isn't the first time we see this kind of report, further weakening their strategic maritime posture amid ongoing confrontations. At this rate, the Russian Black Sea Fleet will become an ex-fleet by the end of this year. Amid these turbulent times, President Volodymyr Zelensky provides a sobering insight into the international dynamics at play. In a candid discussion with journalists, Zelensky expressed a concerning thesis, one we've echoed for months on our program. Many of Ukraine's partners harbor a fear of Russia actually losing the war. According to Zelensky, these allies prefer a Ukrainian victory that somehow spares Russia from total defeat, a stance complicating the provision of decisive military aid to Ukraine. In stark contrast to this cautious international stance, we find inspiration in Estonia's Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. Unwavering in her support for Ukraine, Kallas exemplifies the bold leadership needed during such crises. She argues against the fears that aiding Ukraine could inadvertently draw NATO into direct conflict with Russia, highlighting the impotence of decisive action and clarity in objectives. As we explore those narratives from the tragic skies over Iran to the battered streets of Vovchansk and the hells of global diplomacy, one thing becomes clear: the path to peace is fraught with complex alliances and courageous leadership. Stay tuned as we dive deep into those developments, keeping in mind, as famously Ronald Reagan said years ago, there is one certain way of getting peace. That way is to withdraw, to give up. And that's the thing we will never accept as the way that the West should deal with the states like Russia. You can join us on our website, racon.com. You can leave us your email there. We'll get back to you with our reports. And you can click subscribe button on our Racon YouTube channel. Since Telewizja Republika is mainly Polish-speaking channel and most of our viewers speak Polish, we decided to establish a specific YouTube channel for people who do want to rock with us on a daily basis. My name is Michał, and this is Racon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
It's Monday, so Joe Lindsley is again on Telewizja Republika. Joe, great to see you again. So I don't know even where to start, but since we always do it, so we will do it once again. Every time we hear about some major important Russian losses, we are happy to announce it, at least, maybe not to the whole world, but to those who are listening and watching our conversation. So we got another quite a new part of Russian fleet that was destroyed by the Ukraine.
Indeed, Michał, and this is both, as is so often the case, heavy news and good news today. In the past 24 hours, we have evidence that Ukrainians destroyed yet another Russian ship in the Black Sea. Sometimes these are small ships. Last week, they destroyed, there was a minesweeper that was destroyed, but the ship that was destroyed in the past 24 hours is a missile carrier. It's a ship that the Russians built in 2023. That's the first notable thing, a new ship. It was in the port of Sevastopol in occupied Crimea. And this ship has been used to attack Ukrainian cities with Russian missiles, cities like Odessa. Now that ship can no longer do that type of damage. And what's very notable is that the reports indicate that the ship was destroyed using the ATACMS long-range missiles from the United States. And, it was not until a couple months ago really just a month and a half ago, that the White House gave authority to Ukraine to use American-produced weapons on the Crimean Peninsula. Before, this was not permitted by Washington, and Ukrainians had to use their own drones or to use weapons from the United Kingdom and France. But this is the first time we have clear evidence of Ukrainians using these ATACMS provided by the U.S. In that bipartisan agreement formed in Washington to destroy one of the most powerful ships in Russia's Black Sea naval fleet. And this is amazing because, there's a lot of speculation that this was the last major missile launching ship that Russia had in the Black Sea. We'll see if there's evidence of that. But, if you look at around May 1st, up until about May 1st, Odessa, in those early days of May, the city of Odessa was under frequent Russian missile attack. But Ukrainians have been consistently using these long-range weapons from America and other weapons to hit Russian targets in the Crimean Peninsula, taking out radar stations and air defense, and also missile launch points, including this ship. And Odessa, there have been some attacks. There have been drone attacks, but we've not seen the intensity in Odessa that we saw in early May. Now, while we talk about this, it's very important to point out, so while we have this good news in the south, where the Crimean Peninsula is, in the north, where Kharkiv is, which we can get into later, Kharkiv remains a city largely unprotected from Russian missile strikes because the U.S. still refuses to give Ukraine permission to hit Russians on Russian soil. So that is still a sticking point and a difficulty, and there were some very difficult moments in Kharkiv over the weekend.
Joe, but before we move to the Kharkiv, because this itself is a very interesting case, we know that Russia tries to expand its or differ its tactics on the Black Sea. And we know that they have problem with Sevastopol, they have problem with Crimean Peninsula. So they came up with some solutions with new ports. What is the thing about their new locations that they can operate from to deploy its destructive barbaric power to Ukraine?
Well, first we should note that everything that we see happening in the Black Sea became possible just over a year ago when that so-called the negotiated grain deal expired. When that deal was in place, it was orchestrated by the United Nations and Turkey. Ukraine couldn't attack places in the Black Sea, and everything was under Russia's control. And Russia so benevolently allowed grain exports in a very limited way through a narrow corridor. But when that treaty fell apart, everyone thought it was going to be a disaster for Ukraine. We've seen the opposite. We've seen what happens when you can fight back and how negotiations are not helpful. Since that deal fell apart, Ukraine has been able to start attacking Russian ships in the Black Sea. And last fall, it was about once a month. This year, the pace has been about once every 2 weeks, and they're picking apart Russia's naval fleet. It seems that this ship that was destroyed, I will mispronounce the name, but the ship that was destroyed in the past 24 hours seems to have been the 11th ship out of Russia's 50. Russia has had about 55 ships in the Black Sea fleet. This was the 11th ship totally destroyed. Several more have been damaged. And so going back to late last year, because of this consistent the ease with which Ukrainians were able to use sea drones and sometimes Storm Shadow missiles from the UK to attack Russian naval infrastructure and ships near the Crimean Peninsula, Russia has been forced to relocate its Black Sea Fleet headquarters to mainland Russia. to Novorossiysk, which is sort of close to Georgia, across the Black Sea, much further away than the Crimean Peninsula. And if you look at, I mean, this was a major sort of effort that Russia had to undergo. And during the time when Russia was, last fall, when Russia was moving its assets in Sevastopol to Novorossiysk, there were fewer attacks on Ukraine. I mean, we saw a noticeable decline. Russia was weakened during that time. And that's why many here say that would have been the time to send the weapons. But what we see now, not only is, I mean, Ukraine, anything that is near Sevastopol, anything that is in the water near Crimea, Ukrainians show that they can hit. And it's actually very dangerous for Russian ships to be in that area. But last Friday morning, there was this extraordinary attack by Ukrainians, a drone attack on Novorossiysk, that port, the port and the port city on Russian mainland, where Russia has spent so many months reconstituting its Black Sea Fleet headquarters. Because, by the way, the Ukrainians, was it last September, with the Storm Shadow missiles from the UK, they hit the exact headquarters building of Russia's Black Sea Navy.
Yeah, it was a kind of a shocker for the whole world. We've been asking questions, how come, how that's even possible, but it was, and it was only the beginning of the story of Ukraine effectively having no fleet, destroying one after another all the vessels that you were talking about minutes ago. It started all with the Moskva that was destroyed, which was a big shocker for the beginning. But as for now, we know that the huge part of the Russian Black Sea Fleet was promoted to the submarine status, as the old saying.
Yeah, and it's been consistent. I mean, it's very consistent work. But if you look at what happened in Novorossiysk, it was a drone attack by Ukraine over several hours. It was like something out of the Flight of the Valkyries. If you can imagine that music, and just these drones over hours hitting Novorossiysk and doing heavy damage to Russia's so-called safe port. So we really see great successes in the Black Sea. It's a story that's not very told very much. And everyone says Ukraine doesn't have a navy, but I think, you know, we're seeing innovation in warfare. Ukraine has a new form of navy. It's these sea drones, these surface-level sea drones that have proven extremely effective. And you merge that with the Storm Shadows and the ATACMS, long-range weapons from the U.S., pretty effective. And as we saw when that Black Sea Fleet headquarters was destroyed in Sevastopol, and Russians are talking about red lines, what we saw was weakness after that. And so, I think if people look at this in a certain perspective, you'll see that when there is a major attack like this, Russia is actually, despite their rhetoric, in a weaker position. And so that's why I think Ukrainians are very encouraged by these developments that they see in the Black Sea.
That brings us to the political question that was raised by Volodymyr Zelensky. And this is actually the question that you and I are asking for a very long time, whether West isn't afraid of Russia actually losing this war. I know that it's very hard to digest it in a way, because on one hand we are after 2 years and months of this ongoing Russian invasion. Actually, we are after 10 years, because it lasts since 2014, because this is the time when this war technically began. And we are talking about different phases of the war, with one of them keeping Russia in the outskirts of Kiev. But on the other hand, we are now talking about the examples that you just mentioned. Russia was able to gather about 50,000 troops in their last effort to hit Kharkiv. But we don't know if that really has a chance of being a successful operation. Volodymyr Zelensky said something like this: is there a question of war, of the West being afraid of Russia losing this war? We've heard that Russians will be invited to the anniversary of D-Day landing in few days, few weeks. Let's put it this way. So there are lots of questions regarding this attitude of the West.
Yeah, we've seen a lot. I mean, a lot of this, especially the Washington defense establishment and foreign policy establishment, people, include Republicans and Democrats, influenced by the school of Henry Kissinger, the late Henry Kissinger, who before he died wrote a year ago that the world needs Russia in the balance of the global equilibrium. Sort of this religious belief that Russia can't go away. Meanwhile, I know many people working for the dissolution of the Russian Federation, but more than that, during these dark and difficult months when it seemed that support was drying up from the United States and from other partners, Ukrainians have been doing everything they can to innovate. And that's why they've still, despite lack of ammunition for many months and the very difficult situation on land, they were innovating with drones and doing what they could do to pick apart Russian assets and to make, to get success where they could. And that's what they've done in the Black Sea. And what we see right now happening in Kharkiv. So the Russians are, the very intense fighting. Russians have captured territory. They got a little bit more ground over the weekend north of Kharkiv city, just about 12 miles from the city limits. But it's kind of contained, and the Russians still have not reached the Ukrainian defensive line. The Ukrainian defensive line is deeper into Ukraine for several reasons. One of the reasons is that up there in the north, Washington will not permit Ukraine to use any American-produced weapons, regardless of who donated them, to hit anything on Russian soil. So what the Russians are doing, they're able to attack not only these villages at the border, but they are pummeling the hell out of Kharkiv city. And this happened again over the weekend. There was a Central Park in Kharkiv. It was a beautiful afternoon. If I was in Kharkiv on a day like that, I would have been there probably just at that time. Full of people playing tennis and soccer, kids, old people, everything. People out for a walk. The Russians hit the park, and miraculously, although there were injuries, everyone survived that particular attack. But then just a little bit later, at a recreation point park at the edge of the city, there's a lake and a pool and some cabanas. People had brought their families there for a little bit of a break in the war, and the Russians directly hit it. Gruesome images of the people who were killed and injured. At least 11 were killed, including a pregnant woman. And what is very obvious to me, what Russians, we've heard this chatter for a while, they won Kharkiv, they need some victory. I think many people in Washington are okay with the idea of giving up something like Kharkiv so you can have a wonderful negotiated deal, because they just choose not to care about such a place. So, but even despite this, the Russian terror upon that city of Kharkiv, hitting a park on a Sunday afternoon, they've been hitting that city long enough. They know what they're hitting there. About an hour after that attack, people had returned to the park, and the park is once again full of life. This is this insane spirit of defiance in Kharkiv city. So I don't see that being broken whatsoever. And the more I think people in Washington can see that and look at what Ukrainians can do in the Black Sea, look at the spirit of defiance of men, women, and children in Kharkiv city, you can begin to see the possibility that, yes, this can work, but they need to have the tools and the weapons. And one of the most haunting things I've seen, among many haunting things these past years, you can watch a video of Russians on a highway in Belgorod region, just across from Kharkiv region, and they are patiently waiting in traffic while a Russian MLRS rocket launcher is attacking Ukraine. And the Russians, they just stop, like it's like some traffic works, while the missile attack, while the rockets are launched, and the Russians know that they're safe there, because American weapons cannot touch them.
Yeah,
and
that's actually very interesting, and I would like you to, because well, most of our viewers are very interested in the details of the ongoing war. But in a way, in a normal wartime situation, nothing like this could occur, because everyone understands that if you do have a rocket launcher that is attacking enemy, there is a counter-battery fire incoming in minutes. So nothing like this could happen. But Russia knows that no incoming counter-battery fire can hit Russia, which is the reason why people act normally as if nothing happened. And that's touching in a way. And it's, well, breathtaking somehow.
Yeah, and especially when you know that on the other end of that fire is, I mean, I always want to remind people, most Ukrainian soldiers were civilians before this invasion, a key point. But many people on the receiving end of that fire are civilians, are old people, are children. And Russia is unleashing this hell upon Kharkiv city. Hardly anyone talks about it. In fact, the BBC had an interview with the outgoing president of Taiwan the other day, and very comprehensive, talking about so many things, never once mentioned Ukraine and Russia, even though there's such an analogy with Taiwan and China. And somehow all of this is falling out of the news. We have protests for, Gaza and Hamas. Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, people are protesting in favor of them, and sure, talking about the plight of the Palestinians, but nary a word about the Ukrainians, where the cause here seems to be so black and white and clear cut. as people in a city like Kharkiv every single day live under this dire threat, and it's getting worse and more intense there. And yet, here's the amazing thing: people are not packing up their cars and leaving. I have a friend and his wife. They just have a newborn baby, like 2 weeks old. They were about to go for a walk in that park, but my friend had some work to do, and they were a little bit delayed. And they heard the missile strike before they could get to the park, and they still are not fleeing the city. I think it's very hard for people in the comfort of Washington to understand that there are humans who exist like this with this insane type of defiance and courage.
Yeah,
I
remember talking to people in Kiev days before the invasion. We were reporting from Kiev 2 days ahead of the full-scale invasion, and people back then were already talking about the Ukrainian society getting used to the war being a part of their reality for 8 years back then, in 2022. And we were talking just the minutes after the war came close to Kiev. Joe, we gotta go, so there is 1 minute for you to inform our viewers about the way we can support your effort and Ukrainian people who are fighting against the Russian invasion. What can we do being far away from the front lines?
Well, we welcome support through our volunteer team, UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And it would be best right now if you click on the PayPal option, because right now, rather than to a foundation or NGO, because right now we're working to get our connections and friends of the front, as is everyone here, all the tools that they need, short of the big weapons that we can't provide. This includes FPV drones. I just saw a video, and I've heard so many anecdotes of this, but with a $500 drone or less, you can destroy a massive Russian tank. So we're trying to get supplies like this. Also things like walkie-talkies and things to help Ukrainians communicate. By the way, there was a strange Starlink outage when Russia had this incursion into Kharkiv. There's a lot of questions for Elon Musk on this topic. But what we're doing, we welcome support, UkrainianFreedomNews.com, to get everything we can to those guys who are holding the line in very difficult circumstances in the Kharkiv region. So UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And you can also find my daily reports in Chicago's WGN Radio at that same website, UkrainianFreedomNews.com.
You can find also John on Substack, as you can find us over there. And you can find Joe easily on Twitter. Joe, thanks a lot. Stay safe. We see each other next week.
Dziękuję, Michał. Till next Monday. Thanks.
Dziękuję. Ciao. Ladies and gentlemen, you can join us on our Substack, rackracon.com. That's our website. You can find it here. You can leave us your email and we'll get back to you with our reports. You can also click subscribe button on our new YouTube channel, since we decided that, since most of the viewers of Telewizja Republika are Polish speaking, we decided to establish a new English speaking channel directed to international addressed to international viewers. So feel free to press the subscribe button. It will be easier for us to create a one online space where you will find our programs. So do it, please. We will provide the links and the information about this YouTube channel to our Substack, which is easy to find under the address rackracon.com. Stay safe. We see each other tomorrow on Telewizja Republika. Till today, tomorrow. Bye.